Good day, Industrial Advisor listeners, and thank you for tuning in. If you have not subscribed, please do so by clicking subscribe wherever you podcast. Click the like button and hit the bell if you want notifications of when we put up new content. Leave us a comment about anything we discuss here today or general comments about the show. Now, let's get into it.
Welcome to our Industrial Advisors podcast. We have another 5-minute Friday today. The topic today is going to be a broker's role in lease negotiations. And
It's changed over time.
it sure has. I remember, when brokers start out and when we started out, certainly you didn't know anything about leases. And,
They were scary.
Yeah, they were scary. Like, just talk to your attorney. And, obviously attorneys are super involved still, but we have been through enough leases now, been through enough lease comments calls to where I feel like we're really dialed in and we play a very active role, much more active today than we did when we first got in the business on negotiating leases.
Or not negotiating leases. You remember at the beginning of our career, I'm sure you have a couple of these, but how many times on those small tenants did you sign a lease as is that they were like, refused to hire an attorney?
Yeah, and they just sign it. They're like, we pay our rent on time. And then like your next stage is like, hey, guys, I think we should push back on the, don't let them relocate us and holdover.
Holdover is a big one.
Change holdover. Those
The
were like
three provisions we knew.
Yeah. And so now it's obviously much more complicated. Leases are more complex.
Sure.
Almost every market's gotten more institutional.
Mm-hmm.
And, fortunately for us, we've been through so many of those leases now that we know them well. We know where landlords will push. We know the most important items for tenants. And so it's one of the things that you really grow up in the business on and learn a lot throughout your career is just being able to be a better advocate for tenants through the lease negotiation process.
That's right. And I think, a broker's role has to be significant in this, especially on the sizable deals, because you and I both know if you get to the legal language and then just hand it over to two attorneys that had nothing to do with the deal, your probability of getting that across the goal line without people getting upset or blowing it up is significantly declined. Right.
Yes. And we've worked with a lot of really good attorneys,
Mm-hmm.
and the best negotiations that take place on those larger deals are when you get whoever's in charge of real estate, you get us, and you get an attorney who gets it and is not trying to flex their muscle, but really trying to be a partner, because everyone's goals are aligned, and that's to get the deal across the goal line.
That's right.
But protect your client.
That's right.
And so when you get everybody on the same page and you're really marching towards that, and really paying attention to stuff that really, really matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not stuff that's not going to happen.
That's right.
That's when you have a really successful transaction.
Exactly. So let's talk about, what should the broker's role be? Because by our license, we're not supposed to write legal language, right? You and I do, not illegally, but we do it and then we send it to the attorney. Right?
Yeah.
So quite often, when I get a lease for a key client that expects this out of me, I'm going through and redlining that document per market, right? More than the legal language. I'm not saying we write all the legal language, but we write it and suggest.
Yeah.
And then we suggest what market. And we go through the entire lease, which is now averaging well over 50 pages.
Yeah.
We go through the entire lease, and then we'll send that to the attorneys for then, review and actual redlining.
Yeah. And then a quick call before we flip it back over to the other side. And that's important because it really helps kind of streamline the process, right?
That's right.
Of getting to the points that really matter and letting the other ones not go, but the ones that don't matter, you're not making a huge issue out of those ones.
That's
right.
right.
And I think the mistake that I certainly made early on in my career was assuming that deal points were all in the LOI. That is not the case, right? Like, oh, well, no, that's not a deal point. That's it's a legal item, right?
Yes.
There's so many things in a lease that are actually really important, big items that are our business points that need to be addressed equally as things get addressed in the LOI.
That's right. And as a broker, the earlier we get involved and the earlier we're talking to both sides about the issues, the less they become a point of contention.
Yeah.
Right. So you can eliminate them quickly by being very hands-on. And I would say that's what I try to do in the beginning is talk to both sides, we know where the big ones are, right? So we're trying to eliminate the deal killers, right?
Right.
There's probably 24 of them
Yep.
in every lease. And so a broker's job is to know what those are, understand the attorneys, understand that those attorneys are obviously better at crafting legal language, but way worse at understanding market conditions and what should be given and what is normal. And that's the job that you're not done doing, right? That you need to continue to go and sell and make sure everybody's comfortable on both sides and walk them slowly through that. And then the last thing I'll say is the speed. I always feel like the speed of leases can kill deals, right? It can just get drawn out. People can get deal fatigue. And this is what I always say about leases. Many times in my career, I've negotiated a full lease in one day. On average, it takes 4 to 5 weeks, but 10 to 15 hours of legal time. So you can do it in 1 or 2 days, those 10 or 15 hours, right? And get everybody on the same page, or you can spread it out.
Yeah.
Just know that spreading it out, time kills deal.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And so, I think my one piece of advice for young brokers in this space would be pay attention early on. You and I have taken a lot of education on negotiating leases.
Yep.
And I think the best part for me, in addition to that education, is actually just being on calls and learning early on to go through it, what matters. And at every call you're on, you can become more educated.
Right.
So when you're a broker new to the industry, get on those calls even if you don't know anything and pay attention rather than doing a bunch of other things during those calls.
Yeah.
So it's a really important
That's
tool, I think, for brokers to really, separate themselves, is to understand and be an advocate on the leasing side throughout a lease for their clients.
That's right. And you pointed out the education. There's often classes, whether it be CEBA, or there was one at a couple conferences we've attended recently where you can go in and for a few hours have a leasing class with an attorney, which are great. Whenever I take those, I learn something, and I've been in this industry forever. Yeah. And you learn something new every single time.
Yeah, and you're a better broker because of it.
That's right.
So there's our 5-Minute Friday. Reminder, we have our book that we just published, the Industrial Landlords Agency Leasing Guide. If you want a copy, ping us, we'll get you one. So happy Friday.
Happy Friday.